Hey guys, and welcome to a showdown featuring myself under the guise of Melon Lord up against that guy and his Norscan hordes. And yes, I am going to be using the dreaded Vampire Coast, a faction I don't try too often, but we've gone for a rather unique build up against the Norscans here, but it does have some kind of sense to the madness, I would suppose. So for my build, it is relatively small, especially for Vampire Coast, who tend to be a bit more of a horde faction with loads of onions and shooty units and all that pesky stuff. And we do have some of them, but for the most part, we have zombie pirate deckhand mobs with pole arms, 2 units in fact, and a bit of a diagonal here. And we do have 3 units of the zombie pirate gunnery mobs. These guys are incredibly cheap and cheerful. I can at least shoot the enemy. I wasn't expected to win the infantry fight with them, so I went for the range variety anyway. We have the Shade Wraith Gunners, regiment of renowned deck gunners who are ethereal, which is a big pain for the Norscan forces to deal with, who don't have much magic damage themselves. So if I can protect these guys, they can certainly do a decent amount of damage. And on Baby Guardian duty, we do have the Bloated Corpse here, who we'll dub him Tim. We'll call him Tim. I've got a mate called Tim who I'm sure will appreciate that quite gladly. Bloated Corpse, of course, is a big fat suicide bomber. We'll have to see if he actually manages to perform today. The main core of our build, though, is going to be some depth guard in the front line. These guys, of course, are vampiric infantry who are armoured, anti-infantry, and do have the hunger so they can heal up. But the big centrepiece of my build today is going to be the bloody Reaver Deck Guard, Regiment of Renowned Depth Guard. A unit you don't get to see terribly often at all, but a lot of halberd units have been improved in recent times. So are they finally good? Are they still relatively terrible? We'll have to find out. They do come with enrage and, of course, boosted stats that all Regiment Renowned units do. We do have a Vampire Fleet Captain of Vampires, kind of Invocation of the Heck, Raised Dead, as well as, is that Deathwind? Did I go all out? Not Deathwind, Wind of Death, there we go. So it is indeed. But we've gone for a nice little flying corps. So we have deck dropper bombers. My god, I'm so not used to vampires, so I'm mixing up all the names, including the Regiment of Renowned one, the Salt Lord Scuttlers, Regiment of Renowned, who do come in with fire ammunition, which may be quite helpful up against the Norscan forces. And leading ourselves today, we do have Luther Harkin, of course, coming with all his debuffs, breath attacks, and all that pesky stuff. Now, the main plan here, of course, is to eliminate javelin pressure with the Salt Lord Scuttlers and the rest of the deck droppers, and then Luther Harkin will have free reign. So, nice little Vanguard skirmish here over on the right-hand side by my opponents, coming with double Norscan Warhounds on this flank, and I think he's done the same on the other side as well. Hidden deep in the trees down here, we have some more Marauders. It looks like Marauders mixed in with Berserkers and Skin Wolves, and then his main battle line is relatively similar. Berserkers, Marauders into the sunset, cheap, cheerful, happy to be here, and have a good scrap. We have Marauder Hunter Javelins as well to put pressure on any large crabs or rotten Prometheans that I do indeed bring. He also has Familiar Warriors mixed in with the Skin Wolves. I like combining both of these. I think it gives you a little bit more variety. With a Shaman Sorcerer of Death as well, coming with Spirit Leech, we have the Marauder Ice Wolf Chariots, a unit which I think is very underrated and we don't see terribly often, but I can certainly see being very useful here, pushing into those back gun lines. And for the leadership, we have a basic Marauder Chieftain. Again, something you don't get to see terribly often at all. So really interesting units. He has Fight or Die and Foe Seeker, and that's just about it. But going incredibly wide, which is a really good way to play up against Vampire Pirates, because of course you want to swarm into those back lines and shut down their ranged pressure, which they often bring. But for me, I've brought them in the sky, so we'll have to see how they do perform. Luther Harkin has started to float over just to be a bit of a pest and start whittling down the Marauder Chieftain and duking back and forth away from some of these Marauder Hunter Javelins. Of course, we have the option to heal here from our Vampire Captain. Nice little breath attack does go into the Marauders, but doesn't do too much damage. However, the Marauder Hunter Javelins are taking huge bombing pressure from the deck droppers at the moment and choosing to not fire back, but instead push forward. Now, Hunters in general, particularly the Javelins, really struggle to hit airborne units, so they're electing to try and push forward and try and get some value elsewhere. My opponent does come with a lovely little side attack with his Norscan Warhounds. We have intercepted with the Bloody Reavers as well as Luther Harkin. The Bloated Boy does come for a glorious charge and decides, you know what, I probably don't want to nuke my own incredibly expensive unit, so we're going to float back out to the side. But lovely pressure from my opponent here. I didn't spot this on the left-hand side quick enough, and his Norscan Warhounds have jumped on top of the pirate gunnery mobs. We do have the polearms coming back to assist, however, and at the end of the day, these guys aren't too expensive, so if it's holding up a couple of units for Luther Harkin to float over and destroy, I'm more than happy. One problem we're going to have, though, is the enemy army is numerous, and we can't really expend any of our units ourselves to chase down any of theirs, so every unit that does rout will probably come back into the fray. We're going to rotate to the Depth Guard and the Polearms around to try and counteract the movement of the Skinwolves and the Marauders, and in comes the Bloated Boy! Kaboom! Destroying many a Marauder into dust and clouds of blood. Depth Guard took a little bit of damage as well, but they're going to heal that up by dueling the Marauders in a rather successful engagement, no doubt. We do have one gunnery mob still online, cobying some shots over into the Skinwolves, which is a good use of them. Luther Harkin is firing into them as well, really trying to nuke them down, whilst the Vampire Fleet Captain does engage in glorious Cutlass to Claw action. Bloody Reavers are in the midst here of a ton of enemies darting their way through, charging forward recklessly, showing the world the true heroes they are, trying to get on top of these Familiar Warriors and pressure away the Skinwolves where possible. It looks like the Shade Wraith Gunners are currently quite happy and are shooting into the enemy position, with Luther Harkin acting as their pupper here and their babysitter, pushing away Norscan Warhounds and Skinwolves that try to dart into the back line. But we have no hounds ourselves, which is probably a bit of a mistake. Nothing to chase off all these units, and in come the Warhounds, getting a lovely rear attack onto the gunnery mobs, wiping them out for good. But now that the deck droppers have dealt with the javelins, we're coming in and starting to unleash hell upon the ground force. I'm sure they're certainly getting some PTSD flashbacks right now. Down here in the low ground, the Marauder Chieftain is currently surrounded by a summon, and we have the Depth Guard as well, chewing their way quite happily through Marauders and Berserkers, trying to get back here and protect these Shade Wraith Gunners. Luther Harkin is going to dart out and go after the Marauder Ice Wolf Chariots. He's one of my only units which has the mass to stop these guys in their tracks, and also counter-punch them relatively hard. We have a nice overview of the battle. The majority of our infantry and forces in general have been completely destroyed, but the balance power is in our favour, and that's because our units which remain are the Bloody Reavers, as well as the Depth Guard, who are fighting quite hard, and a load of flying units who are starting to run relatively low on ammunition, however. Good consistent pressure on my opponent, desperately trying to force these hounds time and time again into the Shade Wraith Gunners, but we have Depth Guard here, so we're trading rather effectively. Even if we lose the Shade Wraith Gunners here, who are already a bit beat up, the Depth Guard are just chewing through unit after unit here, up to 81 kills, performing very well. Vampire Fleet Captain is not too shabby herself. Up in the skies, you can see we're starting to run out of ammunition, so we're going to be charging into glorious hand-to-hand combat where possible with these guys. And the Depth Guard not doing too bad. The Regiment of Renown up to 76 kills, forcing off some Marauders, and now harassing this Shaman Sorcerer of Death. Have him surrounded and kicking him to the ground. Up in the sky, the deck droppers continue to rain fire down on Berserkers, which of course is going to be their main target here. There is a full health unit of Skinwolves now darting in to try and get on top of Luther Harkin, who takes flight just in the nick of time. We can now bog down the Skinwolves with multiple troops. A glorious depth shriek does go in down onto the Marauder Chieftain, who has been hornswaggled to Luther Harkin, going to come in for a thunderous charge from the skies. He does descend upon the Marauder Chieftain. Death from the skies for sure here. And Marauder Chieftain is going to struggle here. Of course, he's not the greatest duelist in the world. And it looks like a load of Marauders and Berserkers are going to be rushing it to the aid of their lord, but he has been broken incredibly quickly. Luther Harkin can simply get out of this engagement now using his superior mass, and we can use the Salt Lord Scuttlers, disengage from this fight, and hop on the Marauder Chieftain, and that's just what we do, ensuring he is forced away from the battlefield. Marauder Berserkers going to be getting a lovely charge down onto the gunnery mobs here, going to be able to tear through them pretty quickly, but in the distance you can see Familiar Warriors have taken an absolute pounding at this point, and so have the Skinwolves. Hit them with a power siphon just because I could, and it was one of the only units I could pop it on left, and the Skinwolves have been broken at this point. Lowering their vigour does help a little bit here. The Bloody Reavers may be able to intercept them here, maybe do a little bit more damage as they escape, but no, they're going to be able to loop up and around. Depth Guard now pulling themselves into the centre of this position. Up in the skies, deck droppers have been used to chase off enemy troops. You can see these Marauder Hunters have been shattered at this point, so a little bit of slow micro from me. We need to bring back these deck droppers here, and the Marauder Chieftain is all but dead at this point. I mean, it's going to be a very slow death. The Salt Lord Scuttlers don't do a horrendous amount of damage in combat, funnily enough. We're going to get a big fat invocation from the heck off here, because the Depth Guard really starting to struggle in the meat grinder. They have had their axes bloody for an incredibly long time here, going toe-to-toe with many a mighty Viking warrior, but they're getting as good as they get at the moment, and perhaps more so as well. We've popped a summon down just to try and saturate on top of them and absorb some of the damage. Luther Harkin probably wants to drop in here and do a nice little terror out. I'm a little scared of these Skinwolves at the moment, but despite this, balance power is rather heavily in my favour. The Bloody Reavers do pop Enrage, a mechanic I completely forgot they had, but that lovely 44% damage resistance is really quite nice. They're going to be taking pretty much no damage from this charge from the Marauder Ice Wolf Chariot, as well as these Berserkers, because the Hunger plus Enrage is just allowing them to counteract that quite nicely. Up to 107 kills now. Very impressive stuff. Luther Harkin is pretty much full health at this point, so I'm pretty confident going into the later stages of the battle. Deck Droppers just dropping in, trying to break the morale of the Marauder troops just by charging into the rear and lowering their leadership. You can see Marauders suffering, the Ice Chariot as well starting to run for the hills. Vampire Fleet Captain is cutting her way through with her glorious cutlass and slaying many a Marauder champion. Looks like Luther Harkin, though, just picking on the scraps, being a crafty pirate as he is known to be, and just taking the free kills where possible, popping a Hornswaggle down on the Marauder Berserkers, allowing the Bloody Reavers to really carve through them that much quicker, before now hunting down the Shaman Sorcerer of Death, who does lift one last middle finger up to Luther, and pops a Spirit Leech on him, but I don't think it's going to save him here, to be honest, as the rest of his forces do start to break, and army losses is starting to kick in. A lot of our troops died in this fight, but all the elite key units for our build did manage to survive and rule the sea. So a Pyrrhic victory for sure, because we lost so many troops, and very well played to that guy. I think he's actually maybe played on the channel before, maybe a stream or something. Really cool dude, and yeah, lovely build as well. Before we do break it down, I hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, feel free to give the video a big thumbs up and subscribe for more Total War Warhammer content. If you want to support the channel in any other way, there are links to Patreon down below in the description, or you can become a member of the YouTube channel. Apart from that, if you want to join my Discord and send me replays or get involved in events I host, also links down below in the description. So as I said before, well played to that guy. Interesting build, going very cheap with the Lord option, which is very risky up against Vampire Coast, because Luther Harkin is so good at sniping enemy targets, but at the same time it allowed him to go really wide. Good backline pressure with his hounds, did eventually stunt my ranged troops, completely shut them down, for the most part, apart from the flying ones. And you can see the Shade Wraith Gunners did absolutely nothing. 1 kill, 126 damage value. Really poor trades for me. And that's down to really good micro from my opponent. Thymeor Warriors and Skinwolves did struggle though. These guys are normally the main punching winners for Norsca, but getting counter-charged and dealing with elite depth guard really did cost them, and you can see across the board they did not pay for themselves. And for most of the Marauders, if we look across, really, some of them doing okay gold. The ones that found the range units and the zombie pirate gunnery mobs obviously mopped up, but the rest really struggling with some really poor values across the board from them. Berserkers, however, as well as champions, doing lovely stuff. 800 damage value here with 6.6k damage dealt. And over on this side as well, Marauder Berserker, 5,000 damage dealt, 1,000 damage value, and the champions as well performing pretty well. Unfortunately, his hunters, which were one of his best answers here to Luther Harkin, as well as the depth guard shooting them from range is very viable, did go down very, very quickly. As for my own build, it is the age of the depth guard. They certainly performed fantastic here. 14,000 damage, getting 1,400 damage value on this unit, gaining a couple of chevrons to boot, and the Bloody Reavers, another 14,000 damage, 1,900 damage dealt. But you do expect this from these guys. They are incredibly expensive, but performed very well here. The Bloated Boy didn't do the greatest damage value still, because he was hopped on top of Marauders instead of Berserkers or Champions, but it was a real juicy target and I wanted to pound them down as quickly as possible. 4,700 damage dealt. Pretty cool stuff, getting those 37 kills, and it did allow the depth guard to mop them up very quickly off the field and then surround more of the enemy, lowering the huge kind of deficit in the numbers at the start of the battle there. Of course, the poor little zombie pirate gunnery mobs did just get absolutely swarmed and beaten to a pulp, not performing too well. This unit getting some okay value though, and whittling down the Skinwolves, but it was a dream team combination here of the depth guard holding it down on the ground and the air core here. Deck droppers getting 5,600 damage dealt here, 6,300, 5,300 and 5,700, but not only this, they managed to chase off a lot of troops, getting value that way. The Vampire Fleet Captain, pretty standard stuff, just raised dead and Invocation of Hex, got some good value, 5,200 damage dealt, only 600 damage value, but was a good stable backline, healing up our troops and allowing our elite units to carry the day. Luther Harkin as well is just such a beast. Pretty much lost no health here, still had one death streak left in him, 13,000 damage dealt, 2,000 damage value, could have just stayed around in the air for an absolute age, pistol whipping people if it came down to it. Well, guys, hope you enjoyed. Until next time, peace, peace, and as always, stay awesome.